did something and you just held the door open and everyone is running through it now. It's kind of like sometimes you feel like no one's looking back to say, hey, but at least this person, held the door open.
Welcome to Third Culture Africans, the lifestyle podcast for dreamers, thinkers, and doers. We celebrate artistry, share stories from those brave enough to create something and succeed, listen to diverse perspectives on African success, and those shifting the needle on culture. I'm Arieta Mujay, your host. On this week's episode of Third Culture Africans, we have Arieta Mujay, a fashion powerhouse who discovered her career in creativity purely by serendipity. She has the power to turn anything into a sensation, incredibly modest. I hope you enjoy this episode as I did sitting with Arieta to talk about her beautiful career in the fashion industry. Well, thank you so much, Arieta, for joining us on this week's episode of Third Culture Africans.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
We're having a little chinwag before I hit record, and I was saying I felt like the world needed to know a lot about the work that you've done and your role, not just shifting culture for our community, the African community, but shifting culture in general in fashion. And seldomly do we get to celebrate the people behind the scenes and the people who have made a lot of things possible. So I've written fashion chameleon, stylist, PR, merchandiser, marketing, branding, communications, and in capitals, PR specialist.
I sound like a flipping jack of all trades, master of none.
Well, I think you are the embodiment of fashion, right? You have a definite passion for fashion and a huge appreciation of beauty. I remember the first time I met you. Goodness, I was probably in sixth form. You were styling a lot then. And we have mutual friends in common. But at the time I hadn't met you because you were older. And you guys were, I guess, the first group of people that I had met of African descent and were African and still identified as being African, but somehow had assimilated into the world in London, but were sort of fusing both cultures in a beautiful way and achieving things. So I think you guys, it was like Z with her fashion label, and then Valerie modeling, and then you were doing the styling, and there were fashion shows. And for the first time for me, that was the first representation that I had seen of people in our community doing alternative things, if that made sense, and succeeding at it.
I just want to say, when you were 16, I was like 17 years, so you can stop saying the schoolgirl business.
But it's a huge gap. It's a huge gap then, right? Like, to be fair, it's a huge gap.
Yeah, it is funny you say that because I've always seen myself as somewhat different, and I think that the people I surrounded myself with in London growing up were that, because we were never like, even though we were like Nigerian, went to school in Nigeria, but we were born in England and we came back to England. So in Nigeria, you were not Nigerian enough. I used to be called London girl. Me and my brother were bullied so badly in the beginning of school in Nigeria because somebody asked me,
Ajebo.
oh my God, primary school. Somebody asked me, where are you from? I said London. They started singing London Boy and London Girl for me and my brother on the school bus.
Oh my God, cute Estelle's American Boy.
Yeah, I was like, would you be my London girl or something? Anyway, and my brother and I, we're conscious that, going back to Nigeria, we were not Nigerian enough. And then coming back to England for school, like everyone kind of did, like you come back to England when you flaunt your manners, come back and go to college. And then I remember this teacher telling me at college, at Woolwich College back in the day, that I was underclass, like coming over from Africa to go to school. I was underclass. class. And I was like, yo.
I think that was a harsh reality for me.
I will never forget that woman, Danielle Browning. In fact, I don't even know if she's still alive. I
The
think
name.
outside of my bad mind. I do. That stuff with me. She called me underclass. And it was so funny also as well, because we grew up at a time in the 90s, late 90s and early noughties, where every African person, you wanted to be Jamaican. It was better for you.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
were all on some
Bad man, a bad man.
bad guy, Woodman flex. That's what we were on.
Yeah.
This podcast is sponsored by Malay Natural Science. Malay's products are inspired by the rich landscapes, alluring scents, and ancient wisdom of Africa. Their luxurious fragrance and body care range balances 100% natural active ingredients and scientifically proven formulas to heal, protect, and pamper your skin. Malay ships worldwide, and you can buy their products at maleeonline.com. They also offer a free sample if you'd like to try.
I remember being an ethnic minority and even being more of a minority than anyone from the Caribbean.
100%.
And it was almost your level of blackness was questionable because you were African and you were this alien from somewhere else.
I look like all these kids nowadays celebrating their Africanness.
I know.
I'm jealous. I'm like, I used to split my hair down to be like my girl.
Yes.
No,
because their hair, they could get those the baby hairs to lay in a particular way.
I had to ask my friend, "Carl, what do you use on your hair?" I had to quote that line from Coming to America. Do you use like fruits and berries or something? And she was like, "My hair's not staying down."
That's pre hair forums and learning about 4C and 4B and all the four hair types.
He just made do whatever they had in pack in Finsbury Park.
Yeah, packs. Yeah,
or Yinka stores in Peckham. But that's a time ago, and it was really okay. I had this mentor at the time. It was this guy called Wale Adeyemi, and I'd seen this guy. I heard his name. I'd seen him dress in Victoria Beckham. I mean, he's one of my good friends still to this date, and I spoke to him this morning. And he had a successful brand. Like, he had a brand called Wale Adeyemi. And I was seeing this name and this is a Nigerian person like me. How is this guy doing it? At the time, there was also another guy who had a brand called Aerosol. His name was Leke. And these names were like Nigerian names. So I used to try to go find these people. And basically, it started from there. I remember meeting Wale Adeyemi, and he looked like me, sounded a bit British like I did. But when you asked him his name, Adewale Adeyemi, like nice. And I was like, okay, that's fine. What's your name? Arieta Mujay. Like, I would say my name like that. And I remember seeing Wale, and Wale was dressed in Victoria Beckham that time when Victoria Beckham had that solo career, and we see the jacket everywhere. And he just said to me, you know what? You just have to be yourself. And at this point, I was thinking, what does that mean?
Shout out to the pioneers, by the way.
Shout out to the pioneers, because people don't even know what these people what they put down. But I also remember, like in the early 90s, like when Jazzy B from Soul to Soul coined this whole thing about one race for one, about being Black British. We talked about us being one and stuff like that. I remember when Soul to Soul came out, that was about the first time I actually felt connected to being Black in the UK, and we could be anything. If you look at the Soul to Soul videos, they were all like made with all of their friends and stuff. And Wale and Trevor Nelson, they kind of came from that. And hanging out in Tottenham Court Road at the Soul to Soul store where Trevor Nelson would DJ in the 90s, that really just helped me realize that, I can actually try and be myself, put some flavor in it, be myself.
But I think the challenge with that generation was that it was almost, I guess, society at the time made it feel like it was only one through the door.
Yeah.
Right? There could only be one of them through
but
the door.
It was like that. It was like that, very much so. I mean, I'd meet like people, and I was saying this on my Instagram live the other day, that there were very few Black stylists, but not everyone was welcoming. I'd meet some people, and it was almost as if immediately they saw you in the same space as them, it had their backup. Like, you were coming to their work or their market or something.
Your early career, though, we've kind of dived straight into your styling career, or the styling part of your career. But you started off as a true African child studying business law.
Yeah.
And then you did another degree just because one is not enough.
Yeah, that's how it goes.
in business marketing.
Yeah.
And so always an interest in business. But I guess that takes you from that to then interning a lot. So you did a ton of interning. And then you're working with people like Pixie Lott, Tyson Beckford, Leah Kadebe, Kelis, Lily Allen, Kelly Rowland, Naomi Campbell. If anyone can take a snapshot of the 2000s, you know that every name I've mentioned was at their absolute peak in that time frame. And you were working with them. How do you get from a 2-degree business law, business marketing to interning and then to Arieta Mujay, the stylist?
The stylist, it's quite simple. So when I left university, I went to Brighton University and came out with my business law, business marketing degree. Because I basically, take a few steps backward. When I first came to England, I thought I had to do A-levels because that's what everyone was saying to me. When you came back to England, you have to do your A-levels. Without your A-levels, you can't go to university. A-levels was so hard, man. I did my best in my A-levels, and I only got in for a business course. So when I got into university for a business course, I was first of all in London Guildhall. I knew I wanted to change and specialize. So I specialized in business law. And then when I went to university in Brighton, I could specialize in business marketing because it seemed more fruitful. The truth was that I couldn't be a lawyer, and that was what I told my parents I was going to be because my mom was a lawyer. I thought, at least let me just do half. That's still something rather than none. But, and I realized how much you had to pay to go through law school to become a barrister because I didn't want to be a solicitor. I didn't want to sit down in an office. I wanted to be in court. I wanted to wear the wigs and stuff like that. My mom was that. And realized that you spend so much more money in becoming that, and the chances of you becoming that as a black woman were very slim anyway. If you didn't go to like a proper university, like I said, I got into London Guildhall. That wasn't like a proper university.
Yeah.
And when I realized that, I thought, okay, I'm going to go to Brighton and make the best out of it. So this all started when I was in Brighton University. So getting to Brighton University, I was placed in the halls of residence where all the art students stayed, not the business students. And I was kind of lucky because I came quite late. And where all the business students stayed, it was quite nice. Everybody was they were mostly like African kids and stuff like that. But where the art
international students,
international, and these kids used to party like it was 1999 before it was 1999. But here's the thing: when I had left university in London, I only had one more year to do in Brighton. So when I got to the halls of residence, I was made a hall monitor. So I used to go in and just make sure the people in my halls were doing okay. And these were all art students. So I met a variety of people. I met a bunch of like international talented people that kind of changed my life for forever. I realized that, that actually to be creative, this thing which, African parents used to suppress, people made money out of it. And so I'm talking right from early on, I'd always made mood boards. I'd tear up my mom's magazines and stick them like on the walls, tear up like her, like when you used to go to the tailor's place back in Nigeria, we have all these pictures on the wall.
Yeah.
That are a lot. And when I went to University of Brighton, I've noticed these kids were doing similar. So I used to sit down. There was a girl in my halls of residence with all the art students stayed, and she was in her final year. And true story, her name was Henrietta. Henrietta had asked me if I would style her final year collection. And I didn't know what the hell she was talking about. I was like, what do you mean style?
Well, you were always very stylish yourself, right?
This is what she said. She said, well, I like how you look. You put things together really nicely. So would you do this for me? So I know they carry last now. I just said, yeah, sure. But what I had to do that weekend was actually go to research what a stylist did.
And at the time, it wasn't a particularly clear career path.
No.
I don't think you knew of stylists.
I thought this was a bit of fun. So I remember very well going to the lanes in Brighton, in Brighton, the secondhand stores and just talking to, and even then, you really didn't get people who were styling in the fitting room because back in the day, fitting room, just an open space. You change here, and stuff like that. And so I used to go to fitting rooms with dread because I never liked changing in front of people. And I went to this store, this vintage store in the lanes. And I met this really lovely girl who was always, I was going into the fitting room, she offered, if you wore this with that, that would look nice and stuff like that. So I then began to have a picture of what styling was. So did the collection, fast forward, left university, got to London, and I thought, I don't want to be a lawyer. I don't want to be anything like that. So I don't know what I'm going to do. And before I came home, like when you're at university and you're a final year student, you get all these people coming to try and persuade you to get a career in this or career in that. It was, I think it's called, I don't know what it's called. It's like, it's the opposite of Freshers Week. It's something when you're leaving, when the careers people come in. And I remember at the time, I wasn't interested in talking to nobody. The only people I spoke to were Barclays Bank because they had a Super Soaker as their giveaway present. So I went to Barclays Bank because they were giving away this nice present when you spoke to them.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. And then they'll try and sell you credit cards as well.
Yeah, they did, the bastards. That's another story anyway. But,
like they'll give you like phone credit or something if you take out oh God, it was bad.
They gave me phone card didn't even last long, but that credit card debt, it lasted a long time, didn't it?
It lasted a long time, yeah. Like when you think back now, like I think I had a credit card and it was like £350 and that was a lot of money.
Yeah. What did I use it for? To go Top Shop. What did I use it for? Like literally, all I did was go Top Shop in Debenhams. There was not even like Top Shop. It was like in Debenhams. Like, but anyway, I digress. And I came back to London and literally I was like not feeling going to look for work. And at the time, I had these friends from universities as well, Wale Davis and a guy called, I can never remember Lumski's real name, but they're rappers. They're called Show Them Crew in Nigeria.
Yes.
Then they were called Loose Cannons, and they were like, "Oh, they got this gig. Do you want to can you give us get some clothes for us or whatever?" So I do that. I would go get some clothes. These people, they look nice, blah blah blah. Or be Wale, because Wale was still at university in Brighton when I had left because I was a year above him. But and Wale's brother Akin was a skater kid when I was in university. Film director now, makes all these amazing films and stuff like that now. And I used to think we were different. We were all like flipping different. We used to live that life in that Pharrell's fronting video. That's the life. Going back to London now, I'm like, man, I don't want to go to work in an office.
Yeah.
And so my younger sister, she was doing her A-level, so she was at home, had got a part-time job. And she had gone to this induction for this new job at a flagship store in London. So do you remember when New Look had that big flagship store in Marble Arch?
Yes.
It was like space. It was like the most big store ever. My sister got a job as a supervisor. This is my younger sister as a supervisor.
Oh, wow.
And this was while I was at home pretending to be an A&R for a record company, trying to call to see if they'd want to listen to Loose Cannons music and stuff like that. And I went to go see my sister at work one day. And the manager pulled me aside. She said, "I like how you look. Do you want a job?" It was literally that. And I said, "Yeah." So this happened on Tuesday, and I started work there on the Saturday in the fitting rooms, right? So that was my first job after university in the fitting rooms at New Look. And I remember being in the fitting rooms and just using the opportunity to be quite helpful because I always prided myself throughout university. I worked in Gap, so I knew a lot about customer service. You be polite, you help people, you try and help people. And I did that. And then I did it for 2 months or 3 months. Then there was a vacancy to join the visual merchandising team. And I kind of got it. I don't really remember how, because I don't remember really applying for it, but I got the job. Maybe because I used to help the VM team anyway. So there's something about you being in the place and just doing your best, like it says in the Bible, if you're doing a job, do as if you're doing it for God type thing. At that time, I didn't really know about this stuff. I just worked because
did it. Yeah.
yeah.
And I think there was something about being an immigrant in that setting
Yes.
that you knew that you had to be exceptional in anything that you did, because you
100%. 100%.
it just, whether I got headhunted from Faith Shoes
Yes.
to be one of the first cashiers for Aldo shoes when they came to the UK. And I felt really good about myself because I was earning £7.20 an hour then.
Girl, your mates were £3.60. That was double. That was fantastic.
Yeah. And but I think there was just this mindset of, and it wasn't like you were clearly fixated on the money, but it was all an experience, because for the first time you're being open to a world that you never had access to.
Yes.
I know some of my friends who came from more sort of wealthier families always used to go, oh my God, I can't believe you're working, or how are you working, and how are you studying? Because it was hard studying and working.
Yeah, it was very hard, but we kind of did it anyway. And
and then they'll be like, oh my God, you get all that discount. But there was a point of it, I think.
But they won't be there when you're waking up early to go to work. Oh my God.
But even just the hassle of that discount, you hide the things in the stock room till it went down to...
You be showing up when they shouldn't show up. Like, seriously, do you want me to lose this job? You don't be sweating when your friend comes in the store. You not be trying to cut eye. Go out. Go. My work was doing the sample sale. Everybody would just appear from nowhere. But anyway, from there, I kind of got the job in the visual merchandising team, and the rest, they say, was history, really, because it's from there I got to go around to all the stores and all the new store openings. I was traveling around the country, even got to go internationally to do the windows as a visual merchandiser for New Look.
And so then your styling career starts.
Yeah.
But through this, you've interned in the past. So you've done Smash Hits, if anyone remembers what Smash Hits is. You've done Smash Hits, you've done Red.
It's true, this visual merchandising. So I'll tell you the story. So in continuation, as the visual merchandiser and window dresser for the flagship store, you'd get in early. So I used to do 7 o'clock in the morning till 3 p.m. every day. And you get into the store, and that's the stylists who came to pull clothes for magazines and stuff would come in early because they didn't want to be in the store when the stores were too full of people. So they'd come in and pull clothes for their photo shoots, right? And so they'd come in, pull clothes for their photo shoots and stuff. And I met this lady called Didi Danso. Didi Danso was the fashion editor at the Daily Mirror at the time. Lovely Ghanaian lady. Like, I'd never seen anyone as beautiful as her. I mean, she's 53 years old, and she looks like, oh my God, she looks like she's 17. And I remember her coming in all the time, and I just went up to speak to her and ask her, what is it that you do? And then she told me, and this woman allowed me to assist her every weekend. So she was doing stuff for Bride magazine, doing some freelance stuff. At the time, she and her ex-husband owned a studio, so it was quite easy for us to like do stuff at the weekend. So she would get the clothes. I would have to go and return the clothes on Monday. So I'm going to work at 7 o'clock in the morning with a big suitcase in my hand. I have to leave the suitcase downstairs with security because I wasn't allowed to bring it in the building because of, they want to make sure I wasn't stealing. Yeah, although I wouldn't be stealing the suitcase, the other places.
Yeah, but the hustle, like just the hustle of that lifestyle, right?
Yeah, the hustle, and I'd go and return stuff. And then from assisting her, I started to grow and talk to more stylists in the shop when they came in. And then I met a lady called Ruby Warrington, who was the editor of Smash Hits magazine. And she let me come 2 days a week to do returns. And returns was there to sort out all the stuff in the cupboard and send it back. So I'd work from 7 to 3, and then I'd go to Smash Hits from 3:30, because it was down the road. EMAP was like Oxford Street down the road. From 3:30 to 7 in the evening, clearing out the
returns closet, yeah.
And then, of course, opportunities then came in there. Like, I remember Henry Holland, the designer, was one of the interns also as well. And I remember the first shoot we both assisted Ruby on was Kelly Osbourne was on the cover of Smash Hits magazine because she had that song, Shut Up. And then I thought I'd made it. I was so excited to be there, running around.
CV point highlight, right?
Like, literally, it still is a highlight. Because I was watching the Osbournes at that time. Kelly was like, and I think they
were huge then, right? They were huge.
Even seeing the back of Sharon, I could have fainted at that time. Yeah, and literally that was it, and that smash hits. And can you imagine all the people they had on the covers of smash hits back in the day? And I would go with the assistant, the stylist and her assistant for a shoot. It was crazy. I was seeing like the girl from All Saints that I'd be in my head. I was number 5. I was the 5th member of All Saints.
Never ever
Exactly, and then getting to actually, they wouldn't like a sample, then they'll let you keep it. I remember like the Maharishi pants. I'm talking about these pants that everybody wanted with the dragon down the side. I wasn't wearing the bootleg. I was wearing original.
Yeah, with the embroidery and everything.
And that's how things kind of started. So from there, you start to develop your own contacts, and like I talked about being an assistant, working with Henry Holland, who then became this massive designer himself in the UK, and getting to go and work on his shows, get an invitation to go to his show. Now, after a while, no longer networking, go to his show. Then New Look, my career kind of moved from window dresser. I worked in the press department because the 2 press girls noticed I was always working with stylists and stuff. And the 2 girls actually wanted to leave at the same time. So there were 2 press officers at New Look, and they had an agency. And the 2 girls resigned at the same time. I think was a bit of a cool thing they were doing. So they needed to find people quickly. And it was like, well, the girl downstairs always helps us. She doing, and it'd be like a transition because the stylists, there was a time when they would just leave the stuff with me. They wouldn't even go to the press office. So I got the job, and then they hired a girl called Catherine Reynolds, who's one of my best friends in this life ever. She just come back from Spain. This crazy girl from Liverpool who was just like, as much as a hard worker as me, but she was a bit slick with it. In that, me, I was still giving them African hard work. She was giving them smarter hard work, if you know what I mean. Yeah. So that's literally how the stylist career then. And
then you go from that to PR, and then you end up at River Island. Next job.
So from New Look, I moved my way up from being a press officer to the PR manager. I did 5 years at New Look retailers, and this is when New Look was changing from Stackham High, Sodom Cheap. I'm talking about, we did a collaboration with Lily Allen at the time, and during Vogue Fashion Night Out, they'd have a show in store. So I got to work with like a few models before they even blew. So Agnes Dane, for example, when I met Agnes, her name was Laura Hollins, and she was Henry Holland's best friend. Yeah. And the people's careers were just growing side by side. There was Sonia Wanda, this African girl from Denmark, who was also making a name for herself at the time. And of course, this was the time when, the Pixie Gildos, may she rest in peace, the Daisy Lowe, those kids were coming to the forefront as being, the party kids. So every event we did, it was important to have those kids there.
So then you're now in charge of the guest list as well. So
yeah,
basically. PR is working the guest list. It needs to know who's who that needs to be there, because you need to make those columns, right? Like then it was all magazines. There were no blogs.
You're liaising with the press, and people are becoming a little bit nicer to you. The invitations come in your mailbox. People who want you to come on board their events and sponsor their events will start to treat you, or should I say the position, because you always realize when you leave a job, it's not about you, it's the position really.
Yeah, which is true. Which is true.
Yeah, the invitations will come loads. I think you must remember like when Faith kind of like had this big shoe launch, and they had parties in store.
Yeah,
everybody wanted to be your friend, right?
Yeah. You needed that discount.
Yeah, and so that's kind of how the PR and the styling grew. So PR by the day and in the evening, and then styling alongside that.
So then you go from New Look to River Island, and then you get perhaps one of the biggest and most impactful brand partnerships in fashion in the UK. You do Rihanna's first ever fashion brand partnership with River Island. So this is pre-Puma, pre-anything we've seen from Rihanna since.
Pre-Fenty, long time.
Pre-Fenty, but I think that launch with River Island was so pivotal for the UK fashion scene anyway.
Yeah.
How do you get to, one, picking Rihanna at the time and having the vision to see that her face on anything would blow? Because as an artist, she was successful, but she wasn't Beyonce.
Yeah, but this is the thing. And okay, so I'll take it back. So I was actually doing my sabbatical around Africa as head of PR for River Island / communications. I took a month of work, and because I've been styling like fashion shows for like Diola Sego and working on the business of fashion in Africa, every catwalk thing there was Arise. I was one of the first stylists to work on the
Mercedes
Arise show.
Benz, yeah.
Mercedes Benz. So I was here, there, and everywhere. Like I take my holiday. It's not like I was giving time off. I take holiday and do that. And I remember took a month off to travel around Africa because I've been passionate about that industry for a while. And I was on holiday and I got a text from my old boss to say, when are you coming back? I'm like, you know when I'm coming back. It's in the calendar, everything. She goes, can you call me when you get a chance? In my mind, I was like, what the fuck's happened now? All people, I'm on sabbatical, da 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 da. And he was like, okay, we know you're back next Thursday, but when do you actually get back into England? In my mind, I was like, why are you people asking me all these questions?
Yeah.
Like, and I said, okay, I get back actually in England to England on the Monday. She goes, can you come in on Tuesday? And I'm like, why do I have to come in on Tuesday?
I'm not due to be back yet.
No. So I'm just like, anyway, I'm going to take another week off, whatever. I'll come in for your meeting on Tuesday, whatever. So we're getting on Tuesday. And the meeting was with me. It was a small team of people, a small team of seniors, the head of design, the owner of River Island's wife, Vanessa Lewis, my boss, the head of design for River Islands, a lady called Naomi Dominique. And I can tell you this, she is responsible for all the looks on the high street. Like everybody else, like these brands coming and serving looks, they learn from Naomi Dominique. So I was sat in the room with these people. And Vanessa Lewis just pops out, what do you think of Rihanna? And in my mind, it was just like, this is a trick question. Because I was never on, how do I say? I've always liked them with a little bit of rough. And I thought Beyonce was always too clean for me. I mean, I love B, don't get it twisted. I love B, but Rihanna spoke to me. And this time, I just been reading.
This was him, Mr. DJ Pon the replay, right?
Yeah, but it was even Shut Up and Drive.
Yeah.
That era. And I remember thinking to myself, what you mean? Like, I love Rihanna. So I started to explain to them the difference between, Rihanna and what I feel is beneficial. Not that I was playing one against the other, but I felt like...
but why she fit the brand more, basically.
If Top had Kate Moss, then you need somebody who is like a bit of that and then more.
Oh my goodness, I forgot about that.
Yeah. I mean, well, you need someone who's a bit of that will create the headlines for you. Will have some sort of personality about it, because River Island had this saying, we zig where others zag. They were not necessarily going to be like everybody else. So sit down, have a meeting. I talked to him about Rihanna, and funny thing was that I'd listened to her a lot, and I had this my screenshots of the savers at the time where was like different Rihanna look. So I was like, well, here she looks like this. She can appeal to this, that, and the other. And then at the end of the meeting, the boss just turned around and said to me, I met her mum in Barbados for the week, and I think we might be doing a collection with her. My mouth just open, like, what? So then I got to sign a disclaimer before I leave the room, by the way, I forgot to mention, because I wasn't allowed to talk about this conversation with anybody else. So I had to sign a disclaimer. And then from there, it just kind of just carried on from there. Every meeting about the brand, so it would be me and this small group of people and Rihanna and people from Rock Nation in the room with Rihanna going through the collection. And what was really good for me was something I always loved her for, even though I feel like I still feel like this thing happened to somebody else, it didn't happen to me. We'd be in the room and she would always ask what I thought. It was always like, what do you think? What would you wear it? Type thing. And I realized that I was probably the only black person in the room. That's why. The only black person from the other side of the table, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, but real recognizes real, right?
Yeah.
So
I really appreciated that. And she always, I remember her saying to me, she liked my hair. And then in the papers 2 weeks later, I saw her with a grey weave. I was like,
with the same haircut.
We know where you got that from, girl.
Yeah.
It's history. I can remember so much, like taking samples to around the world to go and show her Yes, No, and her stylist, Adam Selman, who was so, so good to me. She worked with Adam Selman was her costumier, and Mel Ottenberg. Mel Ottenberg is this amazing stylist from New York. They're like, the two of them were just such a dream team. And I just remember them giving me pointers and tips on different bits and pieces. And that also just helped me in whatever campaigns I got to style for small brands or African brands, whatever, just listen to their tips and advice.
And so then there's 7/7 Tour, but then this then thrusts you into a space where you see the potential in the industry.
Yes.
And you're now trying to inject what you know back into the African community.
Yes. I mean, before
this is
to go on the 7/7 tour, I would say this. For at River Island as well, I worked on Graduate Fashion Week. So I was styling Kelis for a shoot. So I got my older cousin friend, Chalia Shagaya. She lived in New York at the time, and I was talking to her about it. And she said, why don't we reach out to a few of these African designers, see if they will lend you samples? And the only person that came back to us was Lisa Folawio. So the first celebrity that was wearing a Lisa Folawio shirt on the cover of the Evening Standard was Kelis, and that was my work by Chalia Shagaya. And that also kind of helped me in terms of brands back home. Because when I emailed them, they would respond. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because I think you broke, again, you know, without saying who our next guests will be in the show, but I think you've broken a lot of African fashion designers on a global scale.
Yeah, in a way, because remember that time your girl Zadai too and I were quite close. Every other time Kelis is coming, what's Kelis going to wear? Get some samples. Zadai was making clothes 24/7 every time for Kelis, because that was an opportunity, you know, at the time to get stuff on them. So even when I was about to go on tour, I took some merchandise from a few brands who sent me stuff to give to Rihanna. She was wearing a lot of Wale Demi beanies at the time as well, so that's kind of cool to be able to help Wale, to give back to somebody who's always had time for me. But you know, it was more about River Island, so I couldn't really be seen to be doing too much. So it was always hard to juggle. Yeah, one paid my bills, the other wasn't. So I had to try my best to juggle as good as well as I could.
But then you made a lot of early predictions, as much as you fostered the industry on the African continent, right? So all the fashion weeks you were a part of, but at the same time, you made a lot of early predictions for the African fashion scene that we're seeing today.
In a way, and like I said, I've just been blessed like that, because Orange Culture, Adebayo was an assistant on the Arise show, and he told me he was going to be a designer. Boohoo, I Am Seagull, the same thing. They told me they were going to be designers and stuff. And the first time I saw Adebayo's collection, and it was androgynous, and knowing him and knowing his journey, it spoke to me. And it's like that I have to help him any way I can. That was the goal, to just try and help him, you know.
And in a mentoring capacity, you did, right?
In some ways, yes, I would like to say that, but you know, I don't believe that I necessarily did it all by myself.
No, not by yourself, but I think you can, you know, sometimes they say your work has branches.
Yeah.
It takes root somewhere, but those branches extend far and wide. And I think your work has always done that across cultures and across industries. You know, you did stuff with British Fashion Council, British Fashion Awards.
Yes. And it's funny you say that, because even during those times, it was really hard for me to gauge, because again, now I'm going back to Africa where I didn't necessarily feel accepted per se. You know, in Nigeria, if you don't look a certain way, how can she work in fashion? You see me walking around with my torn shorts. You say hello to my assistant and say hello to me type thing, because I don't look like it. And I never been like that.
It was a different time, because the time, the people in the fashion scene in Africa were affluent, right?
Yeah, they were affluent and looked a certain way. And if you didn't look like that, or you didn't live on the island with them, it was a bit like, and I was like, island or mainland, all one shithole. What do I care anyway? but Biola Sego was always good to me. And so she took me on as a personal stylist. I went around South Africa with her. And she was the designer of the moment, you know.
She was. I remember when you guys came, because I worked on the first Arise they did in South Africa, the sculpture. I consulted on the project for the sculptures. And then I got a friend of mine, Kukwa from Joe's Perspectives, to cast them in Ghana. And I remember you coming to South Africa in that trip. And we didn't really get a lot of time because you were so busy that trip.
Yeah.
And then now moving forward and still doing that, but then there's African Creative Collective.
Yes.
That's born.
Yeah.
And the idea of that almost felt like it was premature at the time. Would you say
Yes,
that?
yes,
Or
very much so. Like it feels like, in a way, this is where I struggle with myself. If you don't mind me saying, I can only be real and tell my story as real as I possibly can. This is where I've struggled because I've always felt like I was always like one or two steps ahead, and by the time the world's caught up, I've run out of steam. Because you know, as an island, and most of these things you're doing by yourself. So I started this agency to look after African talent and nurture African talent.
and to make it accessible.
Yeah, to make
Because
it
I
possible, I mean, I got my friend Chichia London's collection in collaboration with ASOS.
think
You know, no one had done a collaboration with a
again,
retailer.
no one knows this, by the way. Again, another person you break into mainstream.
Yeah, and not to say that the brand wasn't doing it direct to consumer thing, but it really broke mainstream. And you know, Beyonce was wearing stuff from Chichia London at the time, getting stuff from Solange. It was quite an interesting time because also there was an awakening in America, slowly but surely. Most of the black people in America as celebrities were feeling a little bit of the African self, you know. So that
Yeah,
was,
I think that it was the starting of the consciousness for them to
yeah,
say, hey, there is, I guess, the motherland, and also we were starting to create things that were different,
yeah.
and I guess a lot of celebrities want to be different, right?
I mean, it's not even just like internationally.
Mm.
Trevor Sturman's first big gig, you know, invited him to come to like Fashion Week in South Africa. That was me who did that. I was shooting a client of mine called Joshua Nicole, and I thought, you know what? I met this boy, and I think he's going to be amazing as a photographer. I met Trevor Sturman when he was about 17 or 18, you know, before the hot moments, you know, and I thought,
Yeah.
okay. I thought, okay, I'm going to invite him down. I also invited this girl called Getash Fro from Botswana down. You'll be the influencer and you will be the photographer to shoot my friend Joshua Nicole's campaign. And they did do that.
But I think a lot of this came before, like, I guess because you had such exposure within your PR roles, the idea of influencers influencing, I think through you was the first time I discovered one Nigerian boy.
Oh, yes.
But these guys were like, now when we look at like, but I think your exposure in the PR roles, and then, we'll talk about you going from like the work you've done, again, Boohoo, no one knows that. But going from River Island, you were, I guess, A team at Boohoo, and broke Boohoo in a way. I guess the success of Boohoo were there in the height of when Boohoo came into everyone's consciousness. And then working with the UN on ethical fashion.
Yes, yes. I mean, with the Boohoo side of things, it was quite simple. My company, African Creative Collective, had kind of failed. I should say it didn't take as much. I didn't get the patronage that I was getting when I was doing stuff for free. When it came to start asking people to pay, that's when the story can't get killed, as we say. So I was literally running out of funds, and I'm not the best business person. I'm not ashamed to admit that. But what I do have is loads of ideas, and like try my best hardest to like implement them where I can. And I remember African Creative Collective, I was like, I can't do this anymore because I mean, we'd come back from Peter Womo with Bayo had done all this great stuff in Vogue Italia, and he'd gone off and he'd done a lot of stuff for himself, And one Nigerian boy, Terence, was of course settled in the UK now. He started becoming editor of a magazine called Pause Magazine. And initially, he was working with me on my little agency. Couldn't pay him much, of course. And so basically, a team of people around me started crumbling without that day job money, really. And everyone had to eat, but I couldn't afford. So I took the job at Boohoo because I met the owner of Boohoo when I was head of PR at River Island. He literally came up to me at some event and he went, Black and brown must stick together. The thing about the CEO of Boohoo, Mahmoud Kamani, he's one of my crazy favorite people. He was very, these people started from a market stall. He was a hustler. And I just love that whole hustler mentality. I don't know if it's the thing that, African people recognize other people and you get excited about it because he could sell ice to me on a snow day. That's how. So I remember going to work with him and the first thing he said to me was like, they ain't got no big budgets. Like the island. Not gonna have that celebrity money, And so that was a shock to me, but we had to start thinking differently. And then I worked with this amazing girl called Roxanne, not Roxanne Najad, Rox. She's the smartest person I know. I always say this about her because coming over to Boohoo, I started working with people who were interested in SEO and analyzing data. This girl came from a record company / festival background. She could tell you if you did this, that with this person, you would get this, that over this period of time. Like I wasn't thinking like that when I first came, you know. And coming over River Island, I was gassed. Man was gassed.
Yeah.
Like, it was just like very much gassed. You know who I am type thing, darling.
Yes.
You know how it goes. So
I've done enough work.
Darling, do you know who I am? Type thing. I was gassed. So coming over to Boohoo and the company kind of failing, I had to humble myself real quick. And that was before and I had like loads of my friends, you know, telling me that, you know, this is, you didn't fail, it's just a little stopgap, you could do something else again, but you know, I believe when I see it. But before I went to Boohoo, I'd gone to a friend of mine with this glamour girl in Nigeria, very famous glamour girl at the time called Sarah Ophilich. Well, her older sister was my friend, but she was like glamour girl. And I thought, why can't these Nigerian glamour girls be like Jordan? Afterward, Jordan, okay, we're gonna make you a calendar. So I literally went to Nigeria with her, and with Kelechi Amadi, we shot this calendar that just kind of broke the internet in Africa. And to me, it was like a no-brainer. We have like Playboy, who have got FHM, all these landmarks that make business in the UK. So it's like, let's go do that type of thing. And for me, it was another way to explore another angle of my creativity and, of course, celebrating the Black female form. I remember us going to the market, shooting in the market in Antoni Village. They want to flog us. We were begging them. Like a local gym, and she's there in her swimwear. All these guys, I'm thinking, Lord help us. Let them nothing happen to us. But that calendar kind of broke the internet in Nigeria, and also paved the way for, you know, the glamour industry as you see it now. And it's kind of funny when I look back at the pictures now; they're a bit naff, but a few of them like at the time, you know, some of them a bit like, oh, but whatever. And I remember coming to Boohoo. I'd been a bit more humbled by the time I got to Boohoo because, you know, like the company fell. By the time I got there,
life happens. You had a failed business under your belt.
Yeah, life sure does happen. It happens really fast. And I remember going to Boohoo and going up to Manchester, having to go up to Manchester 3-4 days a week. That also changed my mindset. Like, you know, because you're coming from London, you have this mentality like you know it all. And I realized like my best interns and the best people I've worked with in the UK also as well, they're not necessarily from London. They're from all over. And I love the people in Manchester because they had the same hustle mentality as me. Polite, but they knew what they were talking about. So working with these analysts and stuff, it made me realize the power of the influencer, really, you know?
Yeah. And then that takes you into, are you writing for Cosmo at this time as well?
Yes.
So you're writing on the side for Cosmo as I think you were one of the first columnists to start talking about Black beauty.
Yeah, the first Black beauty. Yeah, because the editor at the time, Lewis Court, who I knew through my job at River Island. To be fair, I always gave them licks, you know, with the hair when I was at River Island, and kind of still do when we got them. She just said, "Would you mind?" It was one of those really funny phone calls where you get like, you know, people are trying to be politically correct and trying not to talk to you, but ended up going. So would you mind, like, you know, you always have got nice hair. And would you mind like doing a thing for a website?
Yeah, and at this time, to be fair, this is pre-wig life and all these things that we're seeing.
All that shit.
Like our hair was bad. Like if you didn't know what you were doing and didn't have one good Jamaican hairdresser tucked up in a side street somewhere,
you ask
exactly. The average.
What the fuck is that?
The average standard of hairstyles were and makeup or even a consciousness of beauty routines was pretty poor.
I mean, thankfully at that time we had Mac already, and I used to pride myself with the face that Mac built. But I remember getting tested from all these companies, you know, be the fact that I worked at Cosmo, I get like stuff from Nivea, but it said like skin lightening. I'm like, this is the bleaching cream, I beg fade. So I had to write about stuff, you know. And also at that time, I'd also shaved off my hair at this point because the hair was chopping. But also I got ill, and I just thought, let me just take the hair off and dye it blonde. So it was more the makeup stuff. I was getting makeup from my friend Kay Flawless, had just got herself the Iman campaign in Europe. So Kay used to send me some lipstick. And then Iman was about the only one and MAC.
Yeah, my first ever makeup counter experience was Iman
Yeah, but that
in
clay,
Debenhams.
everybody's skin color now. But we'll all be like, yeah, because it's a man, we'll try to use this clay, make it look like a
By force, so clay then
by force.
you have to sweat first and the color will adjust.
I was like, what kind of thing is this? That time you don't even dare hug nobody. But anyway, I started writing for Cosmo. But here's the thing: I'd write the article and I had to send it to somebody who was white, and she would edit it. And I used to go back and say, "But you don't understand. You can't edit what I'm writing because I'm writing about it for me. I'm talking about the Afro hair industry, and you want to edit it. When last did you get your hair done? You know." So Cosmo's arrangement kind of was good for like 6 months, and after that, they were not talking about paying, and I was of course not going to continue to do this for
Yeah, because at the time there was no black beauty
yeah. But I
industry.
don't
It
think
didn't
they
really
saw it like
exist.
yeah. I don't think they saw like the future of it, which many people didn't actually see. And kudos to this generation, and the millennials and the ones who are just a little bit older, what they've done with the hair industry. Like, you know what to do with your hair. You won't have no practice like I do now from the times when I didn't know what to do to my hair, when bonding glue was bait. Like, seriously, they love it.
And then Boohoo again. I'm trying to walk everyone through your career in the short space of time that we have. But if anyone's drawing a timeline, I think the one thing that's consistent with your career is everything you touch pretty much becomes gold. So you go from that to online fashion retail. This is at the beginning of online retailing, and you're with N Brown. Again, this is JD Williams, Simply Be. If anyone's in the UK, these are the pioneers of online retail.
Yeah, I mean, for Boohoo, it was such a great experience. Like, I was head of communications globally, so what that means was that I was having meetings with Australia, going over to make sure events were happening there. I was having meetings with, the rest of Europe because they all had press offices, and where I had to oversee and build a strategy that would work with local nuances there. And it was a lot easy. It was a lot harder in that there were budget constraints. So there, I learned how to literally make something out of nothing, really. And I think credit to Boohoo is they didn't want to pay celebrity. They didn't see the power and need in celebrity like that. What we started doing was targeting influencers. So I had to build this framework with this girl called Roxanne Nishad. And the framework basically was what allowed us work with influencers. And I think when I just left Boohoo is when I saw you again after a long time at some luxury fashion Africa thing. And I come up with this template for working with African influencers because I was convinced that as far as Boohoo sells to Africa, they need to be talking to Tools, who's got 2.5 million followers and stuff like that. At the time, no one kind of like really got what I was trying to say, but I was selling in African like influencers, to different brands.
Again, ahead of your time.
Somebody's got to do it, but yeah, yeah, ahead of my time.
Again, yeah.
And I think about it sometimes again, it's where the frustration sets in. Because you're like, okay, maybe if I just held on a little bit more, but
But it's almost like you're the moss you're this rolling stone with the moss, right? That just keeps gathering as you move along.
Or gathering no moss.
I don't think everything you've talked about is no moss. I think one thing that's clear with every guest is, I think each guest is just way too humble. I wonder who the guest I'll have that will break that cycle, but I sincerely doubt it, because I think in the midst of doing, it's easy to kind of not see the bigger picture. 2 decades in the fashion industry is not beans, and doing it in the way that you have, being at seminal and pivotal roles of shifting a whole, not just even African fashion culture, but global fashion culture, I think is incredible. I think even with River Island, you were the first one to kind of create the magazine culture for a retailing brand as their fashion editor.
Yes.
Again, that's something we see now where, it's almost commonplace, right? Every retailer has some sort of an e-zine that we get emailed with looks, or even working with influencers. That wasn't even something, again, now we know of them and we know their earning potential, or even just, Rachel Zoe show highlighting what being a stylist is. And for anyone who doesn't know about these industries or who is not plugged into the fashion scene, you know, a lot of these were things that happen in culture, but not knowing the person behind. And for me, having you on the show is an incredible honor, because I think a lot of people don't know your story and don't know the incredible work you've done over the last 2 decades, purely out of just a love and a passion for fashion. And you continue to do so with your consulting work. And I guess, you know, it's almost like the African scene has a love-hate relationship with you, and you
Yes.
have a love-hate relationship
Yes,
with it.
say that again. Yes.
But you continue to give of yourself and your services to continue to foster the homegrown talent. I think moving forward, you're now podcast, Diary of a Brown PR Girl.
Yeah.
Where you're sharing a lot of these experiences, active on social media, sharing a lot of your experiences, and still consulting for young brands who are trying to figure their way out of the industry.
The truth is, I don't know everything. And I think I just want to learn, and I just try to keep on learning. I mean, Steve Jobs said you have to stay humble and stay stupid. You spend half an hour with me, you probably think it's just the same person. Why is she asking so many questions? Is she daft? No, I just want to know, and I'm just interested in knowing. And I think it's also a thing whereby, you know, you sometimes struggle so hard to try and being a third culture African, you struggle so hard sometimes to be a place somewhere only to not feel the love that you feel like you're giving it, you know.
I resonate with that a lot. And I think even with Malay, right, when I started, I had these huge visions of my people being my customers, and we've waited for this for so long. There's no one breaking the barriers and doing things to this level. Surely we all will band together and start to move this conversation forward. And sometimes you realize that actually you need the consciousness to understand the gravity of some of these actions. And to be fair, I am blessed with a ecosystem and community of friends like you and a whole bunch of other people who have always done great things, who have always been super supportive. But sometimes you wish the gong sounded louder.
I'm so jealous of I can't even lie of the younger generation. I feel like they understand what it is to be collaborative. They understand what it is to celebrate one another, you know. I was in Ghana last year with my friend's sister, Boohoo, I am Sigo, who was one of the assistants when I used to do the Arise show, and she has an amazing brand. She basically lived the African nomad life, which I tried to live. She does it now. She's in Uganda sourcing fabric. She's here and everywhere. I remember talking to her and looking at her and thinking, "Shit, me, girl, you're doing this thing. You're doing it. Like I only tried to do it, but you're actually doing it." And
doing it, yeah.
I thought, wow. If I have this opportunity again, I know what I would do because of something I may have done, but you've continued it and you've taken it somewhere else.
But I feel like when you were doing the stuff that you were doing in fashion, no one had done it. And I think the generation that's come after has really built a lot on the foundations of the work that you've done.
It's the same for you. It's the same thing with like you. When you started today, you ain't stuck in flipping Harrods. Like who's that since? But everybody's
Harvey Nichols. I don't think anyone's done it since. Yeah, I launched before Rihanna.
Yeah, but this is what I'm trying to say. It's like at the time. So sometimes you understand what I'm trying to say. That when you
I do.
You did it something, and you just held the door open, and everyone is running through it now. It's kind of like no one. Sometimes you feel like no one's looking back to say, "Hey, but at least this person, held the door open."
I'm hoping that's what we're doing with Third Culture Africans, really, is highlighting the people who have actually done the work in the way that has shifted the needle on our culture. And I think what I found to be consistent is a lot of the people who have done that, including myself, I think don't come from the social media, toot your own horn. We're not marketing geniuses, even though for some it might be their day job, but we're not personal brand marketers.
I know. Look at Uber, Nike, for example. I went to an exhibition of hers. Like, she's a product designer, yeah, but she had an exhibition at Pall Mall, like the Queen's backyard. That's where we were. And I remember thinking, wow, I wonder if this girl really realized the impact of just even me just being there, how I felt to celebrate her look.
And I think that's with every guest on the show. And the same with you. I'm sure the fashion people or students of fashion listening to this episode will love hearing your journey and your story. And I guess what I'm trying to say is nowadays I realize that, you know, we need platforms like this to be able to toot our own horns. It might not be in the way that is the new way, but it's a platform for us to do that and appreciate the work that we've put in, appreciate each other, and hopefully be a resource for someone out there who's looking for the inspiration, who's looking for a reference point. Who else has done this? To be fair, there's no other Arieta since you.
I beg, there are people there doing
who
different.
Name who? They embody parts of you, but not all of what you've done.
It's so funny you say that, because I remember when I started noticing the shift, I used to get featured in magazines a lot in the UK. I don't know if you remember.
Yes, you had lots of articles profiling you, your style, your opinions, your everything. I mean, sometimes I'll see someone say, I know how we were just in one party.
I remember I was meant to be in this magazine, You Magazine. They were going to profile me and stuff. And it kind of didn't happen. And I bumped into a friend of mine who worked there. I was like, yo, what's happening with this profile? She goes, Ari, we went to one girl that works at ASOS. Maybe you know her, Freddie Harrell.
Yeah. That's when you knew it was shifting for you. I must say, when Malay got featured in You, I was beside myself. I don't think anyone understands. I think there's certain magazines that you just think, I'm never going to get there. And then when you get it.
Yeah. Seriously, you were selling supplement. That was awesome.
But I feel like there was a shift, though. And that's the shift you're speaking about. I think you were the generation before influence, like to understand influencing, to convert. And the question is, were you so in the scenes of the job that you didn't see the shift coming?
Definitely you will be, and that's the thing when you, like, also as well, like, put it this way. I used to live in front of ASOS, and the day Freddie Harrell quit ASOS, I saw her. She was walking away, and I was like, wait, you're not going to work? She goes, no, I just quit. I'm going home. A week later, I saw her. She said she's going to start her own company. I mean, Freddie Harrell now is like, everywhere. But
she's done a landmark fundraise as well. Yeah,
and she bit the bullet. We were still following the flipping hamster wheel, going around doing this. Had to work. Didn't take a time out to see, actually, if I took my time to do X, Y, Z, this could work for me in this way. So I think I was too much in there. I think if anything, if I could do anything backwards also as well, I should remember that, all the energy I put in working for somebody, I could use that energy to work for myself. Because after a while, you get exhausted, And we don't feel burnout, but there's an element of you do feel a bit like...
Very much. To create is work. And I think for a long time within our culture, we were taught that creativity or creating isn't considered work. And it's pleasant to see the shift that we're seeing now with a lot of creatives showing careers and monetizing. And I think even when you were earning as a stylist, I don't think you had the confidence to even own that. Even though magazines were writing about you and profiling you, and you had all the success you had, I think it was at a different time.
There was nobody. Like, which black stylist did I know owned their own consultancy? It just wasn't there. Even when I started my PR agency, African Creative Collective, I was one of the very few in the UK. There was like not one or two in London and in Manchester. But,
But who had the experience though? Like, who had the genuine experience that you had to do it?
But I do know that a friend of mine, Nini Glanville, she was always the other black girl I used to see at events and stuff like that. I think the benefit of her not... Although we are the same, we're similar, we're not the same in that our similarities ended that we were both black PR girls of Nigerian descent working in the UK. I had this added pressure, this invisible pressure from, back home. You have to make money, you have to do this, you have to do that.
Yeah.
That I don't.
Success looked different then. Success was about what was financial.
Yes, success is purely financial. I'm pleased that Lily is one of my great friends till today. So we always talk about these things, and I tell her about these external pressures that African kids, especially African women, especially firstborn African girls, you just carry on your back. It's like you're successful as long as you can feed XYZ as well.
And I guess what we don't get taught is that actually, if you continue down the path that you're going to of passion, eventually the money will come. And I guess in general culture, I think there's an underestimation of the time it takes.
Yeah.
The time it actually takes to convert that. I'm conscious of your time, Arieta. Thank you so much for a great episode. I feel like we need a part 2 of your episode, because I feel like I rushed through a lot of it.
Yeah, because now when we talk about what I'm also doing now in Sweden, I'm doing a lot of cultural curating, and I'm trying to make this documentary. So by cultural curating, I'm trying to show people in Europe, I'm trying to show them a different stereotypical view of what is creativity from the continent right now. You know, we take it for granted that everyone knows. No, you go to an event, everybody brings out a fucking djembe drum. Like, who plays a djembe drum? I don't know. But what I want to show them, we've got contemporary ballet dancers now. We've got artists, like, you know, we've got photographers who are shooting constantly for Dazed and Confused and stuff like that. And yeah, whenever you're ready for a part 2, let me know.
Yeah. And I guess to highlight the talent that's out there, again, testament to the work that you've done. I always say every guest, their work far extends just themselves, and it's very purposeful work. And you've shared some of that just now. Where does everyone get to find you on the World Wide Web, social media?
Yeah, my podcast, which is I've been late in updating, is called Hey, What Do I Know? I don't know everything, but this much I fucking do. My Instagram is at Arieta Who, ARIETA like, who are you? Who? I'm not so active on Twitter anymore because I can't type. I prefer the visuals, but it's at Arieta Who as well. And yeah, arietafashionista@gmail.com. Just hit me up. I'd always love to chat. Chat breeze.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for
for
joining us on this
big
episode.
up on this third culture African situation and Malay and everything. People need to know that you yourself, this ain't no joke. This ain't the first rodeo you've been on. You've been doing this time. People need to know that.
I've been trying to thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Third Culture Africans, the Lifestyle Podcast. We would love to hear from you. So please find us on Facebook or Instagram at Third Culture Africans and leave us a comment. A review goes a long way in getting our show noticed. So please leave us one if you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you next time.